Als ik een beetje vermoeid lijk, ik ben vanochtend overtuigd door Bastiaan Vroegop om een radio-interview op NPO 1 te geven om 4:45 's ochtends. Dat was een fout. Maar dat heb ik dus wel gedaan. Dus ik ben enigszins, goed, niet helemaal wakker. Ik ga alsnog mijn best doen om jullie gewoon een goed praatje te geven. Even kijken. Mag ik slides? Slides, geweldig. Goed, gaan we beginnen. Voordat we beginnen even heel snel een vraagje. Wat iedereen doet, laten we het even met handen doen, dat is makkelijker. Wie is indie? Student? AAA? Wat anders? Ik ben heel erg benieuwd wat alle anderen hier doen. Het is 11 uur 's ochtends, je kan naar huis. Maar lief dat jullie er zijn. Ik ben Rami Ismail, ik was vroeger van Vlambeer. Ik ben de maker van Presskit, een gratis tool om presskits mee te maken. Ik run een event genaamd Game Dev World. Ik hostte een panel genaamd One Reason to Be voor diversiteit bij GDC. Ik schrijf tegenwoordig een newsletter, Leveling the Playing Field, en ik tweet echt veel te veel. Daar moet ik echt wat aan doen. Dat is echt niet oké. De presentatie heet How to Make a Video Game, of eigenlijk korter How to Make a Dream in 100 Simple Slides, waar ik eigenlijk even over wil hebben met iedereen. Rewind. How many people do not speak Dutch? That's more than one. Does everybody else mind if I do it in English? No? All good? Okay. Sorry, so I introduced myself. I'm just some person. Just forget about it. So I want to talk about how to make a video game, how to make a dream happen in 100 simple slides. Before we continue, I just want to add a small disclaimer. It's an opinion, okay? Like, no factual things here. All advice is bad advice. So whatever anybody tells you today, if you just strongly disagree, just... Can I curse? Ja? Mag ik schelden? Mag ik schelden? Okay, fuck them. Basically, just keep in mind, everything has a context. And for me, the context is I became an independent developer about 10, 12 years ago. One thing to know about being indie 10, 12 years ago is we just hated publishers. They were the worst thing, right? Because the whole point of indie back then was to not have a publisher. That was kind of our thing, you know? And then, I have to admit, publishers pulled the greatest trick in the history of mankind, which is quite simply, you didn't need a publisher, and then publishers happened, and now because there were publishers, you needed a publisher to compete with the publishers. So there was no need for them until they existed, and then when they existed, you needed them. Fucking smart. If you can do anything like that, you just make your own market. It's amazing. So I still really didn't like them. But then over the years, I've come to realize that they have some benefits as well, right? They allow you to focus on your game. They allow you to fund your game before you start selling it. So no hate for publishers, but when you listen to this talk, just keep in mind that's my story, right? So that's where we're coming from. So one thing that I really wish indies were slightly better at, developers at large, honestly, is just entrepreneurship. And I hate that word. Really hate that word. But just doing business. Because most of us, if you're in game development, you're probably good at making games. But the parts that are business, you might not be as good in. Now, if you're not an indie, if you want to be AAA, if you're a student, if you're whatever, just follow along with the talk, because it will hopefully teach you a bit how the industry works behind the scenes. And that might actually be pretty helpful when you're trying to get a job, when you're trying to apply somewhere, when you're trying to start a thing, or when you're trying to get funding for something. So what is entrepreneurship? It's taking on financial risks in the hope of profit. That's the official definition. The important words are risk and profit. And risk is the one I really want to talk about. But if you want to start a company, the first thing you're going to need is goals. You need short-term goals, mid-term goals, long-term goals. In games, short-term goals is usually something like 6 months, 3 months, 6 months. Medium-term goals, say a year, and then long-term goals, 2 to 5 years, right? In games, 2 to 5 years is eternity, right? We have no idea what's happening in the next 6 months, let alone 2 to 5 years from now, but you should have a direction you want to go in. if you're starting your studio, if you're trying to get started in the games industry, let me just simplify all of this. There's one goal. If you're starting out, there's just one goal, which is make a game, ship it, and preferably don't make a loss. That's it. The biggest obstacle you have to being in the games industry, to being successful in the games industry, is you don't have a reputation. Because you don't have a reputation, because you have nothing proven, because you can't show that you can successfully do something, inherently nobody trusts that you can do that thing. Which is why you end up writing cover letters and resumes and having chats and interviews, because the people that want to hire you, the people that want to fund you, they need to figure out whether you can actually do the thing, right? So, as you go, if you're starting, if you can do this and get back to the exact same spot in 2 years, same amount of money, same amount of people, but you've shipped the game, you're in a much better spot than you were before. If literally nothing changes about you, besides that you have shipped a video game, you'll find the games industry so much easier to exist in. And if you can have a better team, if you can be filthy rich, if you can be like famous, yeah, that's great. But like, that's your first goal. And then if you complete that goal, your goal shifts. So if you've managed to ship a game, your goal becomes make games. Emphasis on the S. You can't run a game studio trying to make one game. You should always be making a game and thinking of the next one. When you're almost done with the game, you should be working on the next one. No matter what your other goals might be, becoming rich, becoming famous, making a critical game, you will always need the studio to continue to be able to achieve those goals. So that becomes your primary goal. So your goal is to make a game. You're going to do it by working with game developers, game artists, game designers, game specialists, games technology, games press, and games media. So you're going to sell a business case. This has nothing to do with video games. This part has literally nothing to do with video games. And the reason we're going to sell a business case is because there's really two ways of doing business. Every business strategy, just if you drill all the way down to the core, it's either you maximize opportunity or you minimize risk. Maximize opportunity is you have one person that you're negotiating with, whether it's for a job or for funding, and they give you an offer, and it's a pretty good offer, but you want more. So you push for more. If that person says no, we're done. If they say yes, you've maximized your opportunity, but you weren't minimizing risk. Minimizing risk is you get a pretty good offer, but it could be better, and you just go like, I'll take it. That's minimize risk, right? If you're starting out, please minimize risk. Your goal is just to ship a thing. It's not anything else. Your goal is just to get your foot in the door. Focus on that. There's no reason to play risky just yet. And how do you do that? Well, in the case of running an indie studio, which is what I've done, you try to move most of the risk to somebody else as soon as possible. We call that funding. And funding is kind of a funny thing because you can fund a game in many ways. You can take a mortgage. Well, nobody owns a house anymore, so that doesn't work. But you could take a loan, right? And now you're funding your game, but you're keeping the risk. That's not funding. If you want to fund a thing, you want to move the risk to somebody else who is more enabled to take on that risk, right? So we're going to try and get funding. But the game doesn't exist yet because we're at the start of things. We don't have money. So we're selling a promise. The promise is the business case, and its value is speculative, which basically means it's worth fuck all. The basic truth of a video game is, you know what the value of a video game is? Whatever you can get somebody to pay for it. That's it. If you can convince somebody to give you $10 million for a Pac-Man clone, your Pac-Man game is worth $10 million, congratulations. If you have a really big MMORPG and people offer $10 for it, your really big MMORPG is worth $10. That's it. There is no value except for the value you can convince people to pay for it. So, the game doesn't exist yet, and we got to come up with a game. Now, I come across a lot of indies who say, okay, we're going to do market research, we're going to do data analysis, we're going to do all these things. Here's the thing. Y'all suck at them. So do I. Unless you have specialized access to this kind of information, unless you have data, unless you have access to the information and the analytics that you need, or you have access to a company that has that, there's no way you're going to play the market. And if you're going to look at the market right now, do a, what is it at the moment? Survival horror in space, I think is the big thing. That one is in the water, you know. 1 year ago was Japan. Suddenly, like 3 games in feudal Japan got announced. Like, there's always something in the water, and if you are going to follow that, you're always going to lose, because you're always going to be 2 years late. So when you want to come up with a game, forget business, dream. Come up with the game you think should exist. And then we're going to see if that game deserves to exist. We're going to do that by testing it against the market. You're creative, like I said, you probably are not going to be able to play the market. So if you got that dream, let's prototype and let's do some business. How long do you take to prototype? There's one correct answer. As short as possible. Make it shit. Make it awful. Write code so distressingly bad that your programmer cries when they look at it. This needs to be bad. This is not the stuff where you go like, oh my god, it needs to be modular because you know, fuck that. Here's what we're doing. We're testing whether your question marks work. You have a design? Okay. 70% of that design might be very obvious. Just stuff you know works. What are the things you're not sure works? Test those. And you don't just prototype in code or in design. No, you prototype in art. We call it mock-ups. You prototype in design. You call it paper prototyping. You prototype in sound. You call it a cue or a draft. We prototype in everything. And the one trick you learn in every prototyping is please don't do the fucking thing. Make the short version of it. No writer goes like, well, we're going to write a story. Let me do a 700-page draft. No, you write the outline and you write what the ending is and what the start is, and then you figure out how to get from A to B, right? So, now we're going to evaluate the idea. To go there, let's quickly talk about risk and opportunities again. So your risk is that you're broke, you have no experience, and you have no reputation. That sucks. The good news is it also makes it very clear what your opportunity is, which is more money, more experience, and a better reputation. Those are our goals. Your value is related to those. Money is important to you because it allows you to run your company, but also to your audience. If your game is too expensive, they won't want it. Your team and experience, mostly important to your partners. Your reputation, important to your audience and your partners. So, while your own ability to continue is mostly based on money, your lifeblood is probably reputation, because it's the thing that the two most important groups both need. So, let's think from funding. Publishers have a similar scheme, where they have their own risks, their own opportunities. Here's the one thing you should know about it: they're none of your fucking business. If a publisher wants to go broke funding your $10 million Pac-Man game, take their money. Then they go broke, and you have $10 million. They did bad business. That's unfortunate, right, for them. But it might be important to think about their opportunity, because that's the part we're going to be selling to them. Their main power is that they have structure and money, and that they think about money in kind of a weird way. When you go to the supermarket, you might think, wow, this cheese is expensive, and it might be, €3 or something. And then later on, the same day, you might be in a phone call arguing that 1.3 million isn't enough to make your video game. And you need to be able to switch between those two. Because as a person, €3 is a lot. As a company, 1.3 million is really not that much. When publishers are looking at money, they're usually looking to make a return on investment. If you want a really shortcut, just assume that it's 3x or more. So if they give you $1, they want to make 3. If I give you $10, if you make me $30, that means I can reinvest $10 into him, I can invest $10 into you, and I can keep $10 on my bank account, which is a phenomenal return on investment. I would like more of that, because every time I can repeat that, I can do that again. So just keep that in the back of your mind. The other opportunity is that they sell your game under their brand. Who here has played Cult of the Lamb? A Devolver game. Who developed it? What's the name of the developer? Sorry? Yeah, Mighty. But yeah, correct. Nobody fucking knows. Because that's their job. Their job is to make you think, oh, a Devolver game. Oh my god. Great, I will play that Devolver game. Their job is to erase your brand and put their brand in front. And they won't say that. They'll just say like, oh yeah, no, we'll put your logo after our logo, slightly smaller. But that is their opportunity. And the best thing they do is they sell that back to us. They're like, oh my god, but we got a huge audience that loves Devolver games. Nothing against Devolver, I love them. But they grow their portfolio to grow their audience, and they get reputational gain of working with interesting developers. And finally, they know where the money is. So if you have a game and you go, okay, $250,000, the first thing they're going to do is going to take the game, turn around, go to Uncle Microsoft and go, Game Pass? And then Microsoft goes, 250,000, they're like, okay. And now they fund your game because they already have zero risk left. In fact, I've heard of deals where the funding was 250,000 and they got a Game Pass deal of over $1 million. So they already made $750,000 in profit just because they knew who to talk to. So I come across a lot of indies who go, okay, how much should I ask for then? And they go like, is 70,000 too much? Is 100,000 too much? What is too much? Quick thought exercise. How many employees does Microsoft have? 181,000 full-time employees. So let's assume for a moment that a sandwich is $1. Okay? So your indie game of $181,000 could be funded by all of Microsoft skipping one day of lunch. That's how little money that is to a company. It's literally nothing. You could add a zero to it, and it would be 10 days of lunch. That's 1.8 million. You can increase it to 18 million, that's 100 days of lunch. That's not even a year of lunch. We're not like, these numbers mean nothing to companies like that. And for that reason, their business strategy is that they're maximizing for opportunity. They have money, they're going to spend it, and they're going to try and make more money. That's inherently risky. They're optimizing for opportunity. And within that, they'll obviously want to lower their risk. So what we need to do is make sure that we look not that risky. So basically, everything we're going to do from this point on until we're funded is we're going to communicate by emphasizing our opportunities and de-risking our risks. So anything that's risky about us, we're going to try and explain why that is not risky. Anything that allows us to convince them that we're going to make a fuck ton of money, we're going to talk about. I'm going to skip this. There is one lie that is really important from publishers that I think is worth sort of explaining. And it's a lie that is so common that indies repeat it to themselves, that developers repeat it to themselves. The lie is very simple. Do publishers fund indie games? Yes or no? Most people would say yes. The truth is they don't. There's a transaction. What is a publisher buying from you by funding your game? Publishing rights. Your publishing rights have a value, right? And that value is speculative. It's exactly how much people want to pay for it. So if they give you $100,000 for your game, they haven't funded your game. No, they've bought the publishing rights. And you take that money and you fund your game development because you're now legally required to fund that game. Why is that an important difference? Well, say I'm making a game. I have a team of 3 people. And it's a little multiplayer thingy. And each of the people requires $100,000 to make the game. That's $300,000. I could go to a publisher and say that's $300,000, correct? That'd be a fair deal, right? Now say that game is about a bunch of astronauts backstabbing each other in a spaceship. 3 people, $100,000. How much am I going to fund the game for? How much am I going to ask? $300,000? Hell no, I'm going to ask for in the probably tens of millions, maybe in the direction of 100. I don't know what the value of Among Us is, but it's probably pretty high. And that would still get funded because the value of your funding is not related to your budget. But that's what publishers want you to believe. They want to believe that your budget is what they have to fund. If you have something good, they can be completely separate. I recently helped fund a game that had a $700,000 production budget. We funded it for over $7.5 million. Because the value of the game is separate from the value of your budget. If you can make a game that you can guarantee or can convince people will make $21 million, then you can ask for $7 million because they're still going to 3x their investment. You don't have to go as low to your margin. And you know how you then do the budget? We're going to talk about that in a second, actually. So first, we need to continue, we need to figure out what our needs are. So our needs are team, time, budget. This is straightforward. Our team, blah, blah, blah. You all know this. Time, you need more than you think. For a small game, it's probably going to be a year and a half, 2 years. For a big game, 2, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 7 years, 8 years. I've heard everything. Whatever you do, you're a game developer. Do not trust your sense of time. If there is one lesson you can learn from game developers, do not trust your ability to schedule. You suck. If you're a programmer, extra so. I don't know what's wrong with programmers. I'm a programmer. People ask me how long something will take. I'll say 6 months. I'll be done in 2 days. I'll say 2 days. I'll be done in 6 months. I don't know what's happening. It's terrible. So there's not really a way to know when you don't even have things together. But this is generally sort of how you split up development. And this is a pretty straightforward one. You just go through these steps, and pretty much every company in the world will understand them. The most important thing is that you understand that the prototype is where you test your idea, quick, dirty, throw it away. Vertical slice is where you test your production. So you try and make one of everything. One of the art, one of the levels, one of the designs, one of the code, and just see how long it takes. When you put all that together, that is kind of your worst case scenario, because while you were doing it the first time, you had to write the code, you had to make sure it worked, you had to test, you had to figure out the issues, you had to figure out the communication. So hopefully the second time you do it, it'll go faster. So that first time you do it, that vertical slice teaches you your worst case scenario for how long it takes to make a thing. Whether that's a level or a challenge or a track or a character, I don't give a shit. You now know how long it takes to do one of those. Check how long your timeline is, or figure out your timeline at that point, divide by time, and now you know how many thing you can make. Now, one of the problems with that is that we suck at scheduling. So in general, there will still be delays. So your timeline is going to expand by about 30% just because. You're going to charge that to whoever's funding you because they have money anyway. So why not? So then what is your budget? We now know how much time we need. We did the vertical slice. We multiplied it by the amount of things we want to make. We added a 30% margin. Now what we're going to do for the budget is we're going to pick a comfortable salary for everybody. If I ever hear another developer tell me, oh, I'm going to take no salary, I will explode, which just very fucking frustrating. Because what you should be doing is the opposite. I want you to pick a comfortable salary for everyone on your team, multiply that by the amount of months, plus 3 months just in case, because after your game ships, you're going to need 3 months of money to have time to pitch, plus 30% because margin, plus your additional costs, and then take that entire thing and just add 30% on top of it. And that's your budget. Why that 30% margin? Because shit fucks up. How many of you have shipped a game? How many of you would say that nothing went wrong? Exactly. So you put 30% margin on top of it, okay? There's not a single game in the history of game development that went right. It's just not how our job works. Your budget ranges are these for a lot of publishers. Anything within those ranges is kind of the same number. So if you come to a publisher and you go, okay, I need $400,000, you can also ask for $500,000. It's like going to the supermarket and there's like, you're expecting a $2 sandwich and now the sandwich is $3. You're still going to buy the sandwich. You're not going to go, well, fuck that. You're going to buy the $1 extra sandwich. And for a lot of publishers, it's just the same thing, just with multiple zeros behind it. That's just how it works. That's how money works. If they're working on that scale of money, that's literally how they think about money. Now, if you note, I left some spaces open. Between small and medium is a gap, about a $100,000 gap. Between medium and large, there's a gap, about a $2 million gap. I call those the black holes. I'll call them the black holes because if you fund your game in that range, you will find that the small publishers will think you're too big and the medium publishers will think you're too small. And the same happens between medium and large. So if you're ever going to end up making a $250,000 game, please just make a $300,000 game. How do you justify that? You just do. You just up everybody's salary. Everybody has a bonus now. Congratulations. So we have our budget, and at this point, we're still dreaming. Nothing has been tested. We need to test one thing, whether somebody will pay that amount of money for our game. And to do that, we know they want a 3x investment. So what you're going to do is you're going to find comparable games that have made an approximate revenue of 70, 130, and 300%. This sounds complicated, but hear me out. There's a thing called the box lighter number. It works on Steam. So if you're doing PC games, this is super easy. The box lighter number is basically a bunch of indies got together and found out that if you take the amount of reviews a game has and the amount of sales a game has, there's a ratio between them. At the moment, the ratio is about 1 to 48. For every review written, there's 48 units sold. That's good info. So you can kind of figure out how much money a game made. To a publisher, to anybody funding, what we need to do is prove that we will make that money. So we're going to find a game that has earned about 70% of your budget, that is in some way comparable. I don't care how, art style, design, tempo, atmosphere, music, whatever it is, narrative, world, I don't care. You're going to find 3 of those games, one at 70%, one at 130, and one at 300% of your budget. Now, it's very simple. That 70% game, that's your publisher's worst-case scenario. So if you take your game and the 70% game, you should be able to argue that everybody that is going to look at those 2 games on Steam is going to buy yours. As soon as you've done that, you've kind of proven to the publisher that they will do better than worst case. At 130%, you need to make sure that the publisher believes that most people will pick your game. Not all, but most. If you do that, it seems likely that you will sell at least as much as your budget. It's 130% because 100% plus the 30% platform cut, that's Steam, Apple, whoever take, right? So break even is actually at 130%, not at 100. 300% is your 3x. If you can prove that you can stand next to that, you've proven that their investment is worth it. So if you do this for them, you can at least prove that your budget isn't just bullshit, which, frankly, it is until somebody pays for it. It's just nonsense. But by doing this, you can prove that there's reality to it. So, money is done. Publishers offer other services. The only one I want to really quickly touch on is release management. People forget this one. The shittiest thing about releasing a video game is having to go into the Nintendo backend and adjusting something. I swear to God, there's nothing worse than that. It's like MS-DOS would be preferable. I cry every time. So that really helps, having somebody else do that. It's so good. So we've established our needs. Generally, our needs are the opposite of our weaknesses. If we don't have money, our need is money. If we don't have QA, our need is QA. So this is really straightforward. Now we're going to start communicating the business case. And that means we're going to look at things from the funder's perspective a little bit more. And I need you to understand one more thing really well, because I also do pitch practicing. And the one thing I will tell you about pitch practicing is I never want to hear anybody talk about their prototype ever again. Because I'm not buying your prototype. If I'm a publisher, I am not buying your prototype. I'm buying the thing you will ship. Stop telling me that your prototype will have an extra, I don't give a shit. Your prototype might have 10 extra levels, 100 extra levels. What I want to know is when I am done and I have funded it, at the end of this, what will I sell to my users? That's all I want to know. I don't need to know about how much time you spend on the prototype. I don't need to know about how much time you're going to spend on the prototype. Hell, I don't even need your prototype. I need your prototype only if you haven't proven yet that you can ship a thing or that it works. If you can't convince me, I will need it. Otherwise, just go. Now, if you're starting, you will need a prototype, just for the record. Please make the prototype. In fact, you'll probably want to go pretty close to vertical slice, but we'll talk about that in a moment. I have some rapid-fire questions to see if you all got this. You've shipped the game. It was good, but it sold really poorly. It sold 0 copies. For a publisher, is that good or bad news? Somebody yell something. Good. It is indeed good. Why is it good? A, you shipped. B, you're probably not the person responsible for the marketing. It was probably the previous publisher. Which means that this publisher who you're talking to is going to be like, oh, but we can do good publishing. If we had published that, everybody thinks they're good at their job, which works in our benefit right now. Your budget that you're asked for is $150K. You figured out that you're already going to be spending $130K, and you'll need additional work for $30,000. How do you make this budget work? You ask for more money. Exactly. How much more? 150 plus 30. As all of you are saying higher numbers than the number you actually need, which makes me so happy. Please don't forget the margin. Always include the margin, because even in the margin, you're going to fuck up, which means your margin needs a margin. You have a team of highly capable developers, but you've never shipped a title. How do you fix this? Ship a quick title. That's a lot of work and effort. There's a faster way. Hire somebody who has shipped a game. Hire a publisher who has shipped a good game. They're expensive, which doesn't matter because you're going to ask somebody else for the money. You can double your budget by hiring the right people and have a better pitch than the pitch you had before at half the money. Literally true. I've helped games that had a $100,000, $200,000 pitch, didn't go, hire 2 people, double the budget, ship the pitch. Because you're proving that there's value for money. You can lower your budget 30% by living more frugally and not paying yourself a salary, and that way you offset for the margin. Is this a positive or a negative for the publisher? It's a negative. And the reason it's a negative is really simple. What happens if you get sick? What happens if you need money? Your game doesn't ship because you're out. The biggest risk to a publisher is that your game doesn't ship. Anything that is a risk to you shipping is the biggest red flag you can possibly get. I have talked to publishers who have heard pitches that were 3 times what they thought the game was worth, and they negotiated. I have very rarely heard of any publisher who got a pitch that was too low and went, yeah, we'll negotiate. Because too low tells them that you suck at business. That's it. I would much rather get a pitch that is 3 times too high a budget than half as low as I think it needs. Because that one won't ship, and that's my biggest risk, and I have 100 other games that are coming to me that will ship. So why would I pick yours? So, consistently, we're trying to maximize opportunity while minimizing the risk. They're maximized for opportunity. The amount of money they're spending is not that important. As long as you can promise them, you'll make more. So if you increase your budget, that's not worse, as long as you can justify that it will ship and it will make more. So if we're done, we now have a business case. We know our game, we know our needs, we know our value, potential value, we know our opportunities, we've turned our weaknesses into strength, and the business case is very simple. It goes, who saw what opportunity to make what, how can you benefit, what do we need? That's it. 5 questions in a row. That's your business case. So we're going to validate it. How do you validate a business case? See if somebody pays for it. That's it. That's your market research. If somebody pays for it, it worked. If it doesn't, it didn't. A lot of people wait until after the vertical slice to pitch, which means that they're putting 6 months, 8 months, a year of work into getting their vertical slice ready. What I would recommend is start when you have a somewhat representative prototype. It doesn't have to be good yet. It doesn't have to be pretty yet. You can add some mock-ups to your pitch. You can add some paint-overs of your game. You can add lots of things to your pitch to sort of show what the vision is. Here's the thing. If you make a prototype and the publisher goes, we're not funding RTS games, and all publishers go, we're not funding RTS games, which they're funding a few RTS games, but it's rare. You can work on it for 8 more months, but they're still not going to be funding RTS games. So at that point, you've just blown 8 months of life, 8 months of time. That doesn't sound like much, but if you realize that in your life you have a limited amount of time, that time runs out pretty quickly. We all have, like, what, 30 games in us at best? 15 if you're doing big games? 5 if you're doing really big ones? So I would recommend start pitching when you're clear on your business case and you can show what the game is going to be. So what is the pitch then? Well, in the pitch, we're communicating the business case, we're emphasizing our opportunities, and we're de-risking risks. 2 things. A, your publisher is not the audience. They're not gamers. Please don't pitch to them as if they're gamers. It doesn't work. They're not buying a game, they're buying a business case from you. The game is just a means to an end. The business case is the thing they're buying from you. They will tell you otherwise. It's their job to tell you that they really care about the games. Let me tell you, the amount of times I've heard somebody, oh, I love this game, but it doesn't fit. It's not their job to like games. It's their job to identify good business cases that will make their publishers money and reputation. If your game is that, great. So, the pitch. It's the same as the business case. Who, so with it, which opportunity to make what, how can you benefit, and what do we need? You'll find lots of examples from publishers who tell you, do a pitch this way. Let me tell you why they do that. It's because it makes it easier for them. It's not necessarily the best way to ship your game or to sell your game. The best way to sell your game is to start with who you are. And in that, you're going to explain as much as possible what your credibility is. What have you done? How have you achieved it? If I try to sell you something, I'm going to start by introducing myself and let you know, hey, I've done this. I've been here for 12 years. I've been quite successful at what I do, so you should listen to this talk, right? And then it's up to you to decide whether you give a shit or not. I could also tell you at the end what I've done, but then you might be sitting in this talk being, who the fuck is this guy? And you would not be wrong. So, who? Then go, what opportunity did you see? Why does this game deserve to be made? And this usually flows beautifully from who? Because your games come from you. So usually by saying, okay, this is our studio, we did this, it went well, so we're doing another. Okay, I'm this person, I believe that a game about this should exist. Beautiful, okay, so now we have the opportunity, we have the dream. Remember the dream from earlier in the presentation? This is the dream, this is where you talk about it. And then you go to make what? Just going to repeat it. The game when you're done. Not your prototype, not your vertical slice, not any of that when you're done. What is it when you're done? And please remember that publishers will not be convinced by this part, especially if you're new. You're going to have to prove this part. So this is where you set expectations for what you're going to be showing and what you're going to be making. How can you benefit is quite straightforward. Remember that comparative analysis? 70%, 130%, 300%? This is that. You can convince them of that. That's how they benefit. They make money. That's their job. And what do we need? This is the final one. This is the important one. This one is at the end for one reason. It's because if I tell you you can buy a car from me, and I say it's a $10,000 car, 10,000 euro car, I tell you it's a 10,000 euro car, and then I go around the car and I go like, well, you know, there's a dent in the door, the wheels are good, it's yellow, I don't know much about cars. But for everything you're listening to, you're going, is this worth $10,000? So if I tell you there's a thing in the door, you're going to go, I don't think I want a dent in the door for a $10,000 purchase, right? If I tell you about the entire car, and the entire car is pretty good, but there's a dent in the door, and at the end I go $10,000, you're actually more likely to buy it. I got taught this when I sold computers at MediaMarkt. Don't start with the price. Tell them about why the computer is good first, then end with the price, right? And if you did it right, the value that they have in their head is higher than the value that you're putting on the slide. And if you do that, you did a good pitch. If at the end of the pitch you say, okay, this is a $500,000 game, and the publishers are like, we can make $3 million with this. If this is $1 million or less, we might take it. You're good. It'll go internal. They'll talk about it. They might fund it. 3 tips for pitching. Practice your pitch in front of the mirror. And then also, please practice it in front of a person. The amount of pitches I get where it's very clear that people only pitched it in front of the mirror, it's a lot. It's a lot of people. They're just like, hi, so my name is Rami Ismail. I'm a game developer. And it's like, no, I can see the time. I can see that you're looking at your toothpaste. And you're just like taking a moment. Like, please just talk about your game. Learn to talk about your game. Just that can be hard, but it is meant to be a casual feeling thing. There's 3 tones: objective, subjective, and financial. The financial one you're probably not going to do if you need this talk, because the financial one is, we made Among Us, we're going to make more. Do you want to fund us for 25 million? And the pitch is effectively, we made a lot of money, we're going to make a lot more money, so you should give us a lot of money. That's a nice one. If you ever have to do that, congratulations, you're very successful now. The other 2 are objective and subjective. The objective pitch is a very tricky one. You explain how the game works. That's your pitch. That's a really hard pitch to pull off. It is a pitch that designers and programmers naturally seem to lean to. Do not do that. The subjective pitch works better for 99% of games, where you explain, what does the game evoke in the player? How does it feel? What are we trying to achieve? Artists tend to lean towards that. Sound designers as well. You want to pick one or the other. If your game is really hardcore on the mechanics and it's doing something new, just do an objective pitch. But if you do a subjective pitch, and again, 99% of games should be doing this, please do not veer into objective. I do not want to hear, this game has 12 characters. Have you ever looked at a video game on a store page and go like, oh my God, 12 characters, hell yeah, I'm buying this? No, because it doesn't matter. What you want to hear is that, why is that interesting? Is it 12 identical characters? Is it 12 characters with different powers? Do they play different? What is the feeling that this gives you? That is interesting, sell that, right? So 15 levels, great. Are they short? Are they good? Or is there just 15, right? The other thing is, whatever you say, imagine somebody saying the opposite and check whether it sounds ridiculous. This is a good game. The opposite is, this is a bad game. That sounds ridiculous. So saying it's a good game means nothing. Because everybody is making a good game. Nobody goes to pitch and goes like, oh my God, I have the worst game for you. Like, that's a waste of time. It's a waste of attention. Finally, whatever your slide is, every slide has a title, my tricks, right? Your slides in your pitch deck have a title. Even if you don't put it on there, there's always a title. Add and why should you care in the back of your mind, and then make your slide about that. I don't care about 15 levels. I care about why I should care about 15 levels. Reaching out. I'm going to go real fast because I have 2 minutes and 2 seconds. This is really simple. There is a list online. It is Alan's game dev resources sheet. There's a QR code. Scan that, or just remember Alan's name. It is a free list. It has over 200 publishers on it. It has their contact information, form, and what they're publishing on. It is literally the most valuable thing in the games industry, and it is free. If you use it, Alan's Twitter handle is on the front sheet of that. Please send a tweet just saying thank you, because he does a lot of work to update that thing. Then, who do you reach out to from that list? Literally everybody. Literally everybody. You do not choose yet. Do not choose favorites. I don't want, like, if people go, like, I'm going to send it to Devolver because I want to work with Devolver, you don't know if Devolver want to work with you. So why would you wait? Everybody. And then from the people who come back, make a list of favorites. And then, with your list of favorites, what are you going to do? You're going to set it aside and pitch to everybody who's not your favorite to see if you do something really bad, if there's something that everybody reacts to it, like, oh my God, yeah, no, we're not doing that. Oh no, that budget is too high. Oh no, we don't think you can finish it for that amount of money. Fix that, then talk to your favorites. Keep them for last. And if some of the not favorites want to fund your game, great, we'll keep them as backup. I'm not going to do the slide. So, if the publisher bites, you go into negotiation. Remember, there's plenty of things that they can do. It's important to be honest at this part. Let them know what you need, what you can do. Don't be scared to ask for what you need. Remember that this is basically somebody you're going to be stuck with for 2.5 years, and there's like $500,000 probably attached to it. So please make sure you like these people. If you do not like these people, believe me, it's going to be miserable. Honesty is key here. Take your time. Involve a lawyer. Is there a lawyer here? Too bad. You could have given out a lot of business cards on this slide. But talk to a lawyer. Take your time. And until somebody signs your pitch, you keep pitching. Until there is a signature, you keep pitching. Publishers did not stop talking to other developers because they're talking to you. You should not stop talking to other publishers because you're talking to them. You keep pitching. I want to do a specific call out. Humble Games, they put a clause in their short-term contract, which you sign first, that says that you can't talk to other publishers. Fuck them. If you ever talk to Humble, make sure that when you get that clause, you tell them, I'm not signing this, or you wait with signing it until you've talked to literally everybody else on the planet. Then you sign it. The method is very straightforward for negotiations. People ask, how do you do it? Well, it's really simple. Your best offer, talk to them. Don't negotiate with them. Everybody who's not your best offer, negotiate with them until they're better than your best offer. If they're better than your best offer, they're the ones you talk to but don't negotiate with, and now you negotiate with the one that used to be your best offer, and you see if they go over the previous one. That's how you go from 700,000 to 7.5 million. We just kept playing publishers out against each other until eventually somebody said, like, this is kind of our top. When you have 2 or 3 publishers left, you stop. That's it. 2 or 3. You don't want to get in a situation where there's just one left, because if they say no, you're back at 0, and now you have to go back and be like, oh yeah, no, actually we'll take the slightly lower money now. Keep going until you have 2 or 3 left. Sign with the one you like best. After they sign, you inform the other ones. Not before they sign. After they sign, you inform the other ones you publish with. Because I've had a lot of crying developers in my consultancy who basically had 3 deals, said that they were going to sign with one, told the other 2 to go away, and then the third one said, no, actually, we came across a cool game at PAX. They're doing business. So are you. Wait until they sign. Really quickly, because I'm out of time. What is recoup? Recoup is just a different way of saying break even. Usually it is the investment and the service cost. Publishers will use that phrase because they will tell you before you recoup and after you recoup, you get a different percentage. So until they break even, you'll get a percentage. That might be 0. It might be 20. It might be 10. It might be 50. That's rare, but it happens. And then after the recoup, you get a different percentage. Okay? Which one is most important of those? Your pre-recoup or your post-recoup? There's a lot of arguments about this. I would say, actually, neither. The important one is the money you get up front. Because that money is 100% guaranteed. You will get that money. So if you can make that money more than you need, that's already profit. Profit is great. I love profit. Games, very hard to sell. You can make a very good game and sell 12 copies. You can make a very shit game and sell 1 million copies. It's literally coin flips. The better you do, the more coins you flip, but you need a number of them to be heads. So any money you can just get up front is the best money you can get. The pre-recoup doesn't matter that much because we're usually talking about $100,000, $200,000, $500,000. If you get 10% of that, that's $50,000. That's great, but that's not even enough to buy Microsoft lunch. So the money that you are going to be looking for is you want to have enough upfront to cover your time until your game hits post-recoup. That percentage is nice to be high because the game either sells a lot or it sells a little. If it sells a lot, it's going to be at post-recoup in no time. If it sells a little, it might be there in 3 years and it doesn't make a difference to you. So, in general, if you hit post-recoup, you'll smash through it. All right. Our goal was to make a game, get paid for development, keep a margin, bigger team, blah, blah. So, upfront. After your first game, we can argue about this all day because everybody disagrees. Contract, real quick. keep your IP. If you see the phrase right of first refusal, I do not like that one. There's two terms. Right of first negotiation means that when you do another game, you have to go to the publisher that you signed with and go, hey, we're making a new game. Can we negotiate about that? Then you do a negotiation, and then you can say, nah, and then you can negotiate with everybody else. As long as you're doing it in good faith, that's fair. Right of first refusal means that when you have a new game, you have to go to the publisher and go, hey, we have a new game, and they have to say no, which means you have to do a deal in good faith, offer them a number, and not have opportunity to negotiate with anybody else. Do not like that. Watch very carefully what they're recouping. Is it just the investment? Is it investment in marketing? Is it investment in PR or localization or whatever? Watch what they're recouping, and don't allow them to self-spend. There's a bunch of publishers nowadays that have internal QA, internal localization, and they will say, we will do it, but we'll recoup it. But it means that they're both setting the price and the timeline, and then telling you you have to pay for it, which is fucked up. Do not sign that. Check your and their responsibilities. What do you have to do? When? What's your timelines? Payments? Is there a typo? Fuck. Watch acceptance of milestones. How do they accept milestones? When do they accept milestones? What happens if they're late with accepting a milestone? Do you get more time or not? Check that. And finally, termination clauses. How do you get out of the contract if they suck? Look for that one. And what happens when they want out of the contract? What do they need? Do you just need to be bad at your job, or can they just always do it? Finally, I'm not a lawyer, so talk to your lawyer. Like, contracts are super cryptic, even if they don't seem it. Even if it just seems written in very normal language, if there's a random word capitalized, that suddenly means something. So just work with lawyers. Most words have specific legal meanings. And now we're at game development. As soon as you sign that contract, you're funded, which means you're now making games using somebody else's money, which is really the dream. Important. From signing to pitching, from pitch to signing, usually takes 6 to 12 months. Half that time, make sure you're ready with your pitch, your next pitch, before completion. And then at that point, focus on making games. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rami. Thank you.